When it comes to using loops to process collections, even though it sounds very simple, there are several limitations associated with it. If you look at the below examples related to processing collections using loops, most of the functions have similar logic to iterate through elements. You can see here. First, we are initializing a variable. It is of type list. Then we are iterating through orders, and then based upon the condition, if it satisfies, we are appending to this collection, and finally we are returning the collection. Same is the case with this function as well as this code snippet. We have a global variable, and then we are iterating through the elements. If the condition satisfies, we are appending to the list and we are returning the list finally. All these three are related to filtering. Even with respect to mapping or row level transformations or aggregations, the logic is more or less same. You have to iterate through elements, apply business logic, append to a collection or dict or aggregate to a variable, and finally you have to return that variable. What is the side effect of this? We are spending more time on coding non-business logic. It results in too much of code and it can become a maintenance problem. With Python it is pretty straightforward, but still it will waste the productivity of the developers. Instead of using this approach of processing the data using conventional loops, we have higher level libraries, and these will actually solve those problems. They are nothing but MapReduce APIs or pandas. We do not have to develop loops and conditionals. They are taken care by the existing APIs as part of those libraries or the APIs themselves. We can just focus on business logic, and the logic can be passed using lambda functions or named functions if the logic is complicated. That being said, let's run this Python notebook. It will actually provide us orders as well as order items dataset for us. Now, this is the approach which you can use to actually filter the data using the filter function that is available out of the box. You just have to pass two arguments. One is the function which contain the business logic. Second one is the iterable. We don't need to worry too much about initializing a variable, looping through elements, write if condition, and then append to the collection, and then finally return it. You don't need to worry too much about those aspects. You just have to focus on the business logic. In this case, to get all the orders placed by customer ID 12,431, we just have to extract the customer ID, compare with 12,431, and we are good to go. This will take care of giving us all the orders placed by 12,431 customer. This is the same scenario which we have validated earlier when we actually develop the functions using conventional loops. Now, if you want to get those orders which are placed by customer ID 12,431 in the month of 2014 January, this is how it will look like. You don't need to worry too much about the variable or the loop or appending to the variable and then finally returning the variable. The variable is of type list in our case. You just have to focus on the business logic. In this case, we are interested in only those orders which are placed by customer ID 12,431 in the month of 2014 January. Now, if you run this, it will only get those records which satisfy that criteria. Same is the case with this one. Here we are improvising further to get only those orders which are either in processing or pending payment. You can see the two orders which are placed by 12,431 customer in the month of 2014 January, which are either in processing or pending payment status. Another approach is to use pandas library, which will make the code a bit more readable compared to this. In complex ETL pipelines and all, we typically use pandas over conventional MapReduce APIs. If you want to use pandas, you can read the data from the file using pandas.readcsv function. You can pass the path of the file, and then you can actually specify the schema as a list of column names, which are nothing but list of strings, and the schema will be applied on top of the data frame which will be created as output. So in this case, orders will be of type data frame. Once you create the data frame, you should be able to use a function called as query, or there are alternative approaches also, and you can just focus on the business logic. In this case, to filter for 12,431. In this case, to filter for 12,431 for the month of 2014 January. In this case, for the month of 2014 January for 12,431, where status is either in processing or pending payment. You should be able to see the results. Keep in mind that I am not going to cover the explanation part of these examples, whether it is MapReduce approach or pandas approach, because they are yet to be covered. As you get into further sections, you will be learning more about both the approaches and you will be fairly comfortable with both the approaches. For now, I just want to highlight the limitations of the loops to process the collections and the alternatives that are available, which will streamline our development process. As long as you understood that, you are good to go.